Muito boa tarde a todos e bem-vindos ao último webinar do ano da série Acelerar 2025 do Pacto Português para os Plásticos. Irei fazer uma breve introdução do webinar em português, no entanto, o mesmo será conduzido e realizado em inglês. I will do a brief presentation of the webinar in Portuguese, but the rest of the session will be conducted in English. Então, no seguimento, o webinar de hoje será focado na temática da reciclagem química e contará com 3 oradores convidados. A reciclagem química é um dos temas que não tem sido abordado no Pacto Português para os Plásticos, no entanto, consideramos relevante informar os membros sobre o seu estado de arte e sobre as diferentes perspectivas que existem sobre a mesma. A reciclagem química consiste no processamento dos plásticos em fim de vida,
Não queres ouvir?
decompondo-os em monómeros através de processos químicos, permitindo a recuperação dos polímeros ou a sua conversão noutras substâncias que podem ser usadas como matérias-primas num outro processo. Antes de iniciar a sessão, dou umas breves notas acerca do funcionamento da mesma. A sessão será composta por 3 apresentações e vamos ter, logo no final da primeira apresentação, uma breve momento para perguntas e respostas, porque o primeiro orador depois terá que se ausentar. E depois, no final, teremos ainda o espaço para perguntas e respostas e a duração prevista do webinar é de 1h30. As apresentações, como disse, serão realizadas em inglês e no período de perguntas e respostas poderão colocar as vossas questões aos oradores por escrito ou pelo bate-papo ou oralmente através da função de levantar a mão. Os microfones devem permanecer desligados, sendo apenas ativados no período de perguntas e respostas. So, moving to English, today we have with us Jens Kettmann from Styrenic Circular Solutions, Lauriane Velard from Zero Waste Europe, and Cédric Dever from the Consumer Good Forum. I will start with the presentation of Cédric, will be the first one. Cédric is the director of the Consumer Good Forum Plastic Waste Coalition. This coalition is composed of 43 industries leaders from the consumer's good sectors, including retailers, manufacturers, and packaging producers, united in their commitment to take circularity the new standard of plastics packaging. Cédric is a strategic leader in sustainability, specializing in circular economy initiatives and in innovative sustainable plastic solutions. He has 20 years of experience in circular and sustainable plastic packaging through various roles of the global packaging expert at consumer goods companies such as L'Oreal, IKEA, and Danone, and lastly at the Boston Consulting Group. Cédric, extensive academic background, including a PhD in polymer chemistry, coupled with 18 patent technologies and 4 startups issued from his work, and underscore his commitment to innovation and sustainability. Cédric is living in France now. Thank you, Cédric, for accepting our invitation, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for this great invitation in order to share a little more about what we are doing in the field of chemical recycling. Then let me share my screen. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Then let's. What I wanted to highlight to you today is the vision on the principle on chemical recycling in a circular economy for plastics. Then just for those who don't know who is the Consumer Goods Forum, it's a CEO-led organization bringing together manufacturers and retailers and also service providers globally. 400 members, and today the way we are organized, it's that the Consumer Goods Forum is organized into 9 coalitions. And the Plastic Waste Coalition is one of them. And as said by Patricia, I'm leading the Plastic Waste Coalition. Then just to continue about the coalition before speaking about the vision and principles, then the coalition was created in 2019 in order to accelerate the transition to circular economy for plastic packaging waste. Today, we have 43 consumer good members. It's not a lot in terms of quantity, but we represent these members are representing roughly 10% of the global plastic packaging consumption, meaning that when they are aligned, it could have a significant impact. We are working on 3 critical issues. The first one is less plastic. The second one is better plastic. How can you design your packaging in order that it's suitable for recyclability, for reusability, etc. On better system, how to improve the collection and the sorting system of the plastic packaging. The way we are working, it's that we're always searching for critical mass of members to develop and implement industry-aligned solutions in a pre-competitive environment. Today, we have 20% are retailers, 70% manufacturers, and 10% are packaging producers. And as a Portuguese member, we have Jerónimo Martins. Then just to highlight. Then what have we done in chemical recycling? We have 5 working groups. And in 2022, one of these 5 working groups was focusing on chemical recycling. And we achieve alignment on 3 different documents. The first one is the vision and principles. It's what I'm going to share to you today. But we also built a LCA analysis in order to also have an understanding of what are the environmental benefits of chemical recycling, because there are so much noise around chemical recycling. It's always good to have an independent LCA that was asked to Sfera in order to understand in which condition chemical recycling could be more interesting than mechanical recycling or virgin plastics. And the third one is the letter of intent with some of 12 companies that supported a letter of intent in order to say, okay, if chemical recycling was following these rules, we will be able to support with by buying X amount of tons of chemically recycled plastic. Today, very important to note that the focus, even if I'm speaking about chemical recycling, we only worked on one kind of recycling technology, which is pyrolysis. And this is what I'm going to share with you. And since now 2 years, we have put this working group on hold because we are still waiting for clarification in Europe on US regulations in order to see how is it going to look like. But there is still a strong interest on this kind of technologies, but there still need to have some clarification from regulations. Then I'm quite sure that the following speakers will speak more about what are the various kinds of technologies, but just one slide in order to say, okay, chemical recycling is an umbrella term that represents a lot of various technologies. What I will just focus today on this paper, on this vision, is only focused on the last one, the biggest cycle that you can see, what is called the feedstock recycling, that goes from the plastic waste directly to the refining step, which is the feedstock to monomer. Then this is called feedstock recycling. And after, not to be too technical, but feedstock recycling, you have either pyrolysis or gasification, and I will only focus on pyrolysis. Why are we focusing only on pyrolysis? It's that there was a consensus of the members only on this kind of technology at the time. Things are evolving. We have not reviewed our position for the moment, but this was the situation in 2022. Then what about the vision and principle paper? Our focus is on pyrolysis-based chemical recycling as a critical pathway for plastic-to-plastic recycling. First, why pyrolysis-based technology? Pyrolysis is uniquely positioned to complement mechanical recycling, but by addressing its limitation. For instance, while mechanical recycling works well for clean and homogeneous plastic streams, we know that pyrolysis technologies can process flexible, mixed, or contaminated plastic waste streams that are otherwise hard to recycle. What we want to achieve, it's at the end, it's the ultimate aim is to enable high-value food-grade recycled plastic at scale. Something current systems cannot achieve reliably with flexible plastics, especially on polyethylene and polypropylene. Then this technology offers a real solution to close the loop for plastic that currently escape the circular economy. And in order to share also for you some broader context, we are aligning this focus within the framework of a circular economy on phasing resource efficiency, waste prevention, and a low carbon footprint. We want to really highlight that pyrolysis is not a replacement for mechanical recycling, but a complement, allowing us to expand our recycling capabilities and meet increasing regulatory and consumer expectations. Then, what about the vision? The vision is our vision for pyrolysis-based chemical recycling is centered around scaling this technology to meet the challenge of plastic waste within a circular economy. What does it mean? It means by 2030, we aim to scale pyrolysis sufficiently to first enable significant increase in recycling rates for plastic that current systems struggle to process. And second, to meet ambitious recycled content targets by producing high-quality, food-grade recycled plastics at scale. This vision is supported by the three pillars. The first one is the circular economy. It's already what I shared, resource efficiency, focus on reduction, reuse, and recycling as alternative to disposal and incineration. We really want to emphasize that also it's a complementary solution, meaning that it needs to address mechanical recycling limitations, such as if you want to have food-grade recycled PE and PP today, it's very complicated. With this kind of technology, technically it's possible. We want to be sure to avoid the loss of material properties, high sorting losses, and limited processing for flexible packaging. Really important, it's not to say that we don't trust or the consumer goods member recycling. It's to say if you want to find source of recycled plastics based on recycled PE, recycled PP, food grade, mechanical recycling would be very difficult to bring this. But if you are using pyrolysis, technically it's possible. Then what are the principles? We have six key principles that we identified in order to guide the implementation of these kind of technologies. The first one is that we want to be sure that the source of input materials, to be sure that we are not in competition with mechanical recycling. Then we need only to focus on materials that are not recyclable by mechanical recycling. The second one is material traceability. We want to ensure a robust mass balance protocol to track recycled content. The third one is the process yield. We need to be sure to maximize plastic to plastic output, to minimize fuels and other non-recycled outputs. The fourth principle is also an environmental impact. You need to show that to demonstrate a life cycle emission equivalent or lower than virgin plastic. At least you need to have this. Health and safety, same thing. Manage emissions to protect people and the environment. On claims, we need to be sure to communicate claims that are transparent from a transparent way in order to support consumer trust. And it's only if you have these 6 principles that these companies are supporting chemical recycling pyrolysis-based technology. Then it was a very, I would say, a very short presentation, but all these documents, I showed you that this is the vision and principle. You can find also the LCA analysis that was asked to Spheria, and also the letter, the the letter of intent are all available on the internet site of the Consumer Goods Forum. There is important also to add that not all the 43 companies are supporting these papers on these documents. You will see probably with the following presentation that it's not an easy topic, or it's not a very simple topic where there is a full alignment. And also very important to add that since 2022, we are still waiting for clarification in terms of regulations. The packaging on plastic waste regulation should be voted and should be voted in the following days. What is said is that also there will be some clarification on the mass balance allocation that will be used in order to claim recycled content from this plastic issued from this kind of technologies. Then I'm stopping here. I don't know if you have any question, but do not hesitate. I'm there for this.
Thank you, Cedric, for your really nice presentation. Now, if someone has any question, it's not for Cedric. Now is the time, because Cedric after has to leave. So temos alguma questão para colocar ao Cedric? O Cedric, entretanto, vai ter que se ausentar. Portanto, se alguém quiser colocar alguma questão relativamente à apresentação, é agora o momento.
The presentation will be shared in PDF form. There is my email address. Then if there are any questions afterwards, do not hesitate to send me an email, and I will be very happy to reply.
Okay. Thank you, Cedric, so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Olá, Patrícia, boa tarde. Pronto,
Sim,
talvez eu
Cristina.
possa colocar uma questão para
Obrigada.
abrir aqui as hostilidades. Hi, Cedric. My name is Cristina Costa. I'm from the Portuguese Association of Mineral Waters. I have one question for you and for all of us. Do you think there is the risk of using this discussion on chemical recycle to delay changes on packaging to allow mechanical recyclability to be feasible for some materials? Do you think this risk exists, and how can we avoid it?
Well, can you repeat the question? If I understand well, it's the competition between mechanical recycling and chemical recycling?
If there is the risk of for operators to use the chemical recycling process that is being developed, idea to delay changes in packaging in order to allow mechanical recyclability in the same packaging. Do you think this risk exists currently? And if so, how can we avoid it?
It's a good question. Today, we also, the flagship of the coalition is the Golden Design Rules. These are a set of 9 rules in order to facilitate the redesigning your packaging for circularity, and especially for recycling. And it's focused more on mechanical recycling. And I can tell you that all the members are really working on that, making progress year after year on redeveloping their packaging. And they are not thinking that, yeah, with chemical recycling, due to the fact that it can take on the principle everything, they don't need to redesign their packaging, etc. No, they are still working on this in order to be sure that, yeah, pyrolysis-based technologies are super interesting if it contains a maximum amount of polyethylene or polypropylene. It gives the best yield, and it doesn't work if it contains all plastics containing oxygen or all molecules like this, meaning that PET is not good for pyrolysis. Then what they want to see, it's just being sure that it's redesigned for circularity. And after circularity means mechanical recycling first, and in a second step, for the ones that are really too difficult to recycle by mechanical, when you have some colors, things like this, it's impossible to remove the colors. On the principle, with pyrolysis-based technology, you are able to remove the color and to achieve something that is virgin-like quality.
Thank you. Mais alguma questão para o Cédric? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Cédric, for
Thank you.
being with us, and well, stay as long as you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Só reforçar aqui uma informação. Esta sessão está a ser gravada e depois vai ser disponibilizada no canal de YouTube da Smart Waste Portugal, bem como as apresentações também depois serão disponibilizadas na newsletter do Pacto Português para os Plásticos. Okay, so let's go on. Now we are having the presentation of Jens. Jens Ketman has served as Secretary General at Styrenic Circular Solutions since October 2018. Previously, he held the role of Vice President Standard Products EMEA in ENO Styrex. Oh, it's really difficult to say. So James has over 30 years of international experience in the chemical industry, including BAF in several managerial assessments across Asia and Europe. James studied applied sciences in the University of Mannheim. Cannot say this name.
That's correct, Mannheim.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, sorry for my English, James, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation. So the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. And if I would try it in Portuguese, it would be even much worse. So you did good. My compliments. I will now share my presentation together then with some introductory remarks. I hope it works because I'm not so often in Zoom, and bear with me if I share now because it tells me PowerPoint unknown.
I can share if you want, Jens, and you can say to change the slides.
Okay, it leads me somewhere in the settings and whatever, but again, 1 second, maybe give it a chance here. Oh, no, I don't want to leave the meeting. No, maybe you share it then.
Okay.
I have one slide, but again, it doesn't matter. I can also do it on a voice-over modus, and that's not the issue. Yeah.
So you are seeing, right?
Yes, I see, and all the others do see. Again, apologies for the quick but solved issue with the presentation modus. Basically, first of all, to give the opportunity here to SCS, and also thanks to the good network we are having also in Portugal, including the Portuguese Plastics Pact. I like to state maybe in the beginning that it was not always the case. Now, for good reason, it's more and more the past that we with the Portuguese Plastics Pact very open discussion. I have a bit of an echo or something. Sorry for that. That we always have very open, constructive discussions thanks to the pact and the members. Some of our members are also members of the pact. But I like to say really much appreciated that we always have and had and will have this very objective view on things and topics to discuss, and again, being fueled positively by progress of the styrenics industry. Basically, so I like also to say for the others, you will hear now from me something a bit similar on the topic with regard to chemical recycling and the complementary impact of chemical recycling, all that, and also from our work. The colleagues here from Zero Waste Europe and Consumer Goods Forum are well known, and of course also a part of our, let's say, positive and constructive dialogue to really drive solutions for recycling towards then the year 2030 and beyond, from regulatory, but also most important from own commitment and let's say self-starting activities. Yeah, having said that, you see here the title, The Time Is Now. It is really what we not only believe, but also what is happening. I will come to this later in more detail. But basically, it's really that now it's taking much progress in the recent months of 24. So we expect a strong momentum also carried forward in 25. Therefore, the topic chemical recycling is a crucial one also on way forward. And if I say the time is now, I can already give a bit of a preview and say this basically also is valid for the policymakers, for the Commission, in particular DG Environment, because we need binding rules, long-term sustainable binding rules on chemical recycling. If you, for instance, look on mass balance and what we need and have to have in order really to have a solid, let's say, work plan and a solid regulatory and rule framework for chemical recycling. Having said that, I'd like to move to the next slide. Again, this shows a bit, if you look at the green circle, why we say it's happening now. We are really now in the high quality recycling for food contact suitability of recycled polystyrene. This is something, it cannot get more challenging, food contact recycling activities. I will come later to the various technologies bringing us there. But looking at the value chain, but in particular the end user, and also align topics such as food safety and compliance and end user information and sustainable effort. It's really a very important also part of our developments. On the other side, it's always part and therefore part of the solutions we are offering. But this shows a bit the dimension where we are. We are deploying for that various technologies. You will learn about depolymerization and dissolution, which we consider to be part of chemical recycling. We can argue and debate, but in a way, plastics to plastics and plastics to chemicals is part of the chemical recycling. And we are entering with those technologies already this territory. But also it was mentioned from Cedric that mechanical recycling, highly purified even for food, is not only, let's say, a vision or an objective, it's real. We know that, and we are continuously working on that to drive those solutions. The chemical recycling was mentioned on decontamination and all that for food in particular. We still, and this is important to note also, can use polystyrene for recycling of mixed plastics waste and chemical recycling. But the good news here, I think, to the market from our value chain and partners is we are already in practice. We are already scaling. You surely have heard and seen some of the recent examples, what is happening. And this is something giving us both in parallel the operations we are in, plus, of course, the approach towards chemical recycling in the future, and also scaling up to what we all need and want, which is recycling economically and at scale. The scale is very important, maybe not in all, let's say, mindsets fostered and anchored, but this at scale is, to the one hand, a challenge. On the other side, looking at recycling rates and looking at the solutions we have to find, the scale is part of the solution. We are talking big volumes and to the extent also not small problems. So therefore, we need also the scaling. And I come now to some proof points. If you can move to the next slide. Basically one, it's almost as old as SCS. It's part of our narrative. On the other side, it's still valid, and this describes also a bit the strategy and progress of SCS and our members, of course, that we right away from the start defined what is to be done. Where are those issues? Where do we need solutions? And on this slide, you see a bit the overall circle, which is well known, also the one I used earlier on the circle from, let's say, the waste channel management up to recycling solutions. Here we see it in more detail, what is then with regard to recycling solutions, the DNA of SCS. If we look on the right side, you see everything, and we can start also from the left, but we start from the right side, the collection and sorting. If we talk about food contact, if we talk about controlled or closed loop, the collection and sorting over the value chain is highly important. It also already includes the end user in those activities, because we have to sort the materials after being collected in bags, for instance, by the end users. So the part of the end user, often missing in the discussion, is highly important, because as good the information is, and somewhat the forward work with regard to information on recycling and recycled content, as good will also be the response in higher recycling rates and collection rates and sorting. But you see on the right side the sorting, which is derived a bit to our 3 technologies I mentioned before. So depending on the complexity, but also on the sorting process as such, you feed the different technologies. The most convenient and the most effective also with regards to CO2 and complexity and cost surely is the already existing mechanical recycling for food. This can be done in pellets and on flakes, but again, the decontamination is taking place in mechanical processes, even in extruders with converters. And then we move a bit to the left to the chemical area of dissolution, which is still a physical recycling, as it calls in some publications. So the polystyrene stays as is purified via a solvent-based process and precipitation. But again, you can purify from inks, from additives, back to food contact materials. Also, this is in place. Members we have here, like Trinseo, like external parties, are in the market with those technologies. Total, just to mention for completion, and or polystyrene based and originated from Canada. But this dissolution process is also well practiced already. And then we have the depolymerization, which is also in practice. Recent example, Indaver in France, plastics to plastics recycling, and also plastics to chemicals and campaigns. A big step forward also for France. Side note, we were opposed to a ban there in 25, which is now lifted. It's not gone, but it's lifted for a longer period. Means with our recycling activities, we move to polystyrene being labeled as recycling in operation, which is then the seal of approval also to recycle and market materials in France. And Indaver capacity of 25,000 tons, scaling to 65 in the next step, is an important part. And you see also, as we move to the left, the important part, the punchline, energy and CO2 footprint, as always, has to be very important in the considerations. Whatever we do, the lesser we move, example, mechanical, being highly efficient on CO2 savings and also on cost complexity and energy consumption, the more we move to the left towards the chemical recycling, in our case, depolymerization, the more energy consumption you will find. It still is not a mission impossible in a way, but it will derive a bit and direct the flow of collection and sorting and recycling activities. And if we then go to the very left, which also was mentioned earlier on already, and the, let's say, feedstock recycling, predominantly mixed plastics waste, not as sole polystyrene recycling activities. You see just the comparison in depot with roughly 470 degrees. And then we move above 600, you see higher energy. You see also in the extent to CO2, most likely a different footprint. On the other side, we are just starting that. And as I said earlier, we need clear mass balance rules and all that. So what we know will be further in quality and quantity proven once in 25 we have clear, let's say, rules on chemical recycling. But it shows nicely where we are. And as I said, holistically, SCS is embracing all technologies. We also can do the chemical recycling alongside mixed plastics waste, but we prefer to already operate in the market and market our materials, which I think is good news for the market, and also preparing and setting the scene for what is coming then in the next years with regards to recycling. So we can move to the next slide. And as I have said, if you look at our situation, and I mentioned earlier Consumer Goods Forum and also Zero Waste Europe, we came a longer way, but now in a positive way. Let's say the view on polystyrene, critical also from the volumes of polystyrene were lower in volume compared to, for instance, PET or polyolefins for sure. But we have compensated and overcompensated this with really striking technologies and proof points of recycling activities. So as a matter of fact, the feedstock is comparatively smaller compared to PET or polyolefins, but still, since most of it is packaging, it's really a critical mass we are dealing with here, and also part of the solutions we need to find. Most of it is anyhow food contact. Again, a good, let's say, perspective for recycling activities, in particular mechanically, but also from the sortability and near infrared, and then also if you want the individual yogurt pot to sort it out, it's all possible. So we have, and I'd like to compare here with PET, the same, let's say, status and the same process parameters and properties as PET has. And this is a nice transition also to the middle point here, where we say, okay, what kind of technology? We have the mechanical, the dissolution, I mentioned that. And I like just to say, it's not only PET having depolymerization, we have it as well. It's the same criteria, the same outputs, the same quality applying. So we are really together with PET and all those areas which you see here already well underway, which is not the fact for all polymers. On the other side, I like to stress that we have to find holistic solutions for all plastics. We have to deal and find solutions for plastics recycling, and therefore looking a bit again to the topic of today, chemical recycling in general, and looking at other polymers which are from recycling not in solutions yet, to the extent this chemical recycling for sure will open then the door for really holistic recycling, and also even surpassing recycling rates we need to have in future. But I've said earlier, recycled polystyrene is safe or as virgin. I heard the terminus virgin-like. I'm also fine with virgin-like, but the safety and the quality should apply. It's a drop-in for converters design, which is high on the agenda, with a SEN discussion, which is ongoing right now for standardization. We are part of it, and we are delivering on those state-of-the-art technologies. And also we have our novel technologies well underway, looking at the new regime, new and let's say in a way from 2022, the 1616 food contact recycling, where we have several numbers of novel technology at start and in practice, which again will further boost recycling rates and recycling for food contact, of course, in the mechanical recycling area mainly, and to the extent also in dissolution. So this is a positive summary on what we see. We have very favorable environmental footprint, which should come along always with our activities, and also with scaling up in line with the plastic strategy, or if you will, also looking at the recent now confirmed PPWR, that we also can live up and conform to those recycling content and also recycling and packaging quotas, which are in the PPWR from 2030 up to 2035 and beyond. So this is good news. And if you have not seen Inderwear opening now the depolymerization part also to a large extent for styrenics, I just like to draw your attention on that because it's really part of what I just described, that we are really in the scaling and also deploying different high quality recycling solutions and technologies for the market. Yeah, alongside the next one then, please. And just to give you some example, and I don't know how much and good I'm on time. I have a tendency to bend the time a bit, but give me a signal. Otherwise, if you say, oh, you used up the time we have foreseen for that, and I will move faster, I promise. But I think it was very important to give you this entry remarks and also our position to chemical recycling, which is positive. We are supporting the model of fuel use exempt. This means also like Zero Waste Europe, for instance, and also we would not support any recycling activities resulting in fuels. I think in Europe, this is anyhow not predominantly, but we see it still in other parts of this world. But the fuel use exempt model for chemical recycling, to stress this a bit, is not only by SCS, by a broader coalition, seen as a good compromise towards the urgently needed mass balance rules to be then given forward in 25 by the DG Environment to really somewhat give a long-term certainty, which also then on clear mass balance rules towards the end user on the one hand, recycled content, and to the industry invest on the other hand, give really a safe and sound platform for the coming, at least we are thinking in 10 years here with those mass balance rules. They should be once, let's say, established, unchanged, at least for the coming decade. Having seen that, and this is an example on Germany, which somewhat gives evidence to what I said earlier, we are well on the way in Germany. More than 60% of collected household packaging polystyrene is already going to recycling. Again, what I said earlier, if you look at the volumes, shows a bit that we are a smaller part of, let's say, the plastics packaging and recycling activities in a way. However, positively looking forward with recycling and opening new markets, if you will. It's positive that we have already comparatively high rates in practice. And also, if you look at the growth, this is somewhat by accident alongside SCS activities, maybe not. But of course, we have strong growth here, even opposite to a more, let's say, at the past 2 years stagnant market trend, which is really great news. Yeah? And therefore, what we can and will do and could do in Germany, we look also at other countries. If you go to the next slide, I'd just like to mention, surely you heard about Spain. If you move to the next one, please. I mentioned France already. Italy, I can not tell in detail today, but watch out on Italy. Soon more positive news to come from Italy. And it always goes in the same, let's say, pattern. It's very important to have the commitment of the various stakeholders. Of course, you need a good recycling technology, but this alone will not ensure the scaling. You need commitment by the value chain. You need the, let's say, commitment over the process chain, starting with collection and sorting. And you need the capacities as you need it for recycling as well as for the collection and sorting in order to always grow in parallel to the feedstock. This slide, and it will be shared later, what you see in blue here, those are all links. So to whom of you who is interested to look a bit what is behind those capacities, just click on those links and you will be directed to the corresponding announcement and evidence point. Those are all, as it's in the header, sorting capacities, not all, but selected examples, including PS. Yeah, and now we can say, okay, but to the extent here and there, yet PS is not excluded, but the technical feasibility is there. And just to pick here, let's say 1 or 2 examples, on the right side, you see Belgium at Phosplus. There it's already well underway. And if you look at the upper one, because it's by far one of the biggest ones, at least for the moment, the site 0 in Sweden, in Motala, the capacity of 200,000 tons of let's say, sorting. They also already collect separately rigid polystyrene and also foam polystyrene in EPS as well as XPS. So, and those materials mainly in Sweden, but also at this point in time being available to the market, will also further drive the invest. I leave it here, but again, read from that polystyrene is growing in recycling capacities, but ensures also the value chain, the industry, that the collection and sorting capacity is basically even coming before in order to enable then the capacity scaling, as I mentioned earlier, very important recycling at scale with regards to the requirements of the PPWR.
Chance.
So, yes.
5 minutes, please.
Yes, yeah, I will. I was supposed to run at the end. First I walk and then I run, Patricia, but thanks for the sign. Next slide, please. And same here, and even more quick. But this is something we also see from PRE and reporting and recycling capacity. The first good news is that the PRE and others now include polystyrene, rigid polystyrene and recycling in their reporting. This was for some time not the case. It's now the case more and more. Just to mention here PRE and the UBA, which you have seen before, the Umweltbundesamt in Germany, or McKinsey. You see here the growth of recycling volumes, which again, if you look at the post-sorting and recyclate, which is then made available to the market, the growth and let's say the feedstock growth is rather important for any kind of recycling activities. And this again, just to jump back what I said earlier, it is predominantly suitable for mechanical recycling, but also for depolymerization, dissolution, and also later on, if you sort from mixed plastics waste, more and more polystyrene, also for chemical recycling, for mixed plastics waste, and also including, let's say, materials which from decontamination properties and all that might be predominantly, I think this was mentioned earlier by Cedric, go to chemical recycling in the mixed plastics waste area. But you see also what I said earlier on the right side here, I like to mention this Inderware. Again, this is also interlinked. If you click on it, you get those announcements and more transparency and information. We are growing, and we are growing, as it seems, fast, and also a bit the general difficult economics from energy and all this, what we find still in the general market. The recycling area of polystyrene is well underway. This is the message here. And if you go to the next slide, and I think 3 minutes should be left, I also will here just look at those headings. Again, you see already, SCS inserted a lot of interlinks. Please use those. Therefore, I'm just mentioning the lower parts here on the upper left. We are strongly working with Reciclagem, which is really important in our work to get the seal of approval with regards to recyclability, recycled content criteria. SEN standardization, I mentioned that. You know all, it's rather important to define those technologies and processing parameters. And this also on way forward, eco-modulation, all that what we need, and also a bit with a viewpoint to the future bigger chemical recycling. If you look at SEN, this is all in process and has to come. I think de-inking was even mentioned before also. So this is rather important. If you then go to the lower left, the waste prevention, I think, yeah, it's important for me to note, as I said, we started with the food packaging and all that, but SCS is seeing this holistically, also non-packaging food. We have this famous circularity matrix, as we call it, because we want to have all our molecules back. And once we start collection and sorting, means we should collect everything and also sort everything. It's visible, and the world has more to offer than just garment hangers and flower pots and park benches. We have high quality recycling, but also have to find solutions for other materials to bring them into their secondary life. And design for recycling next to packaging needs is also important for those other, let's say, applications and articles. Upper right, I mentioned France, I mentioned Spain, Alianza, rather young, but important for Spain because next to France, another big market, and next to Italy, also a big market. And if you look at the lower right, the minimum recycled content information, even if you look at what I said to full use exempt, mass balancing and recycled content, and somewhat correct information also to the end user, where those materials and how they are recycled is highly important. Yet the end user is willing to buy and to pay as it seems, but we have to give him access to also materials and solution. Again, there were some recent announcements by SCS partners with German dairy. Last week, look at it, Ineos Dilution did something nice together with Lidl and Müller. So we are in scaling and developing those things, but again, we have to make more food grade PS available. And this famous EFSA seal of approval, novel technology, even here, we are working towards those common targets also after monitoring, reporting, bring our materials also to EFSA and verification by EFSA. So a lot of things to do. We are very busy, as you see, and I hardly can use the time here. I would need more, but I will stop it here if I'm not wrong. If you go to the last slide, it should be then already the final one. We have also newsletters, but very important, look at our website, some advertisement in own interest here. A lot of things you will find there. But I think what we have today, the collaboration and discussion with all partners, and also here with Zero Waste Europe on the Consumer Goods Forum, and specifically also for Portugal, I think Interplus is online, if I'm not wrong. They will tell me later if I did good or if I missed something. But I trust I gave you in this time a good overview where we are, what we do. And the last point, there's more to come. Back to you, Patricia, and any questions.
Thank you so much, Jens, for your presentation. So now we move to the next presentation, and we do the questions at the end. Okay. So thank you so much, Lauriane, for being with us. Lauriane works as a policy officer on chemical recycling and plastics to fuel for the NGO Zero Waste Europe. She engaged with the European institutions to develop ambitious human and environmentally friendly legislation focusing on the chemical treatment of waste. She holds a Master in European Studies with a specialization on chemical legislation from the Sciences Po Rennes in France. So thank you so much, Lauriane, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will also share my screen. So, are you all able to see my screen and to hear me?
Yes.
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 Perfect. Thank you very much. So first, thank you to the Portuguese Plastic Pact for the invitation and for presenting our views on this topic. So just wanted first to say that this picture, the background, has been taken at Guimarães, and apologize spelling last year during our network-wide gathering in Portugal. So first, before entering into the subject, I would like to present a bit more Zero Waste Europe. So Zero Waste Europe is the European network of communities, local leaders, experts, and change agents working towards a better use of resources and the elimination of waste in our societies. So we are more on a global level part of Gaia, which is the Global Anti-Incineration Alliance. And we, as an organization, have co-founded the movement Break Free from Plastic and also the Rethink Plastic Alliance. And for you to have also perhaps an understanding what it means, is that we have 37 member organizations in Europe, and we have 2 members, especially in Portugal, which are Zero and the Circular Economy Portugal. So this set a bit the scene when it comes to who we are. So now I'm gonna present you a bit the subject I wanted to touch upon when it comes to the chemical recycling, and also presenting the views of Zero Waste Europe. So I will guide you first, perhaps the European legislative landscape at the European level, then the position of Zero Waste Europe when it comes to chemical recycling, then also making a point on the environmental consideration that have to be considered in this discussion. Then I would like also to make a point on the definition of recycled plastic content. And last, but certainly not least, also making a point of having an effective recycling system happening in Europe. So first, from a European legislative landscape, as most of you may already know, we have many member states that are not on track to meet their recycling targets, both for the municipal waste, but also for the packaging waste. And I checked at the numbers of the European Environmental Agency, and Portugal is at risk for the municipal waste recycling targets, but is on track for the packaging one. So then, the idea to improve circularity when it comes to plastic was to introduce recycled content, and it has been the case during the previous mandates that a lot of recycled content targets have been introduced in various EU legislation. So when it comes to the packaging regulation, but also the end-of-life vehicles, and as well an upcoming one when it comes to textile under the eco-design regulation. And as you can see, when we speak about chemical recycling, there is a lot of word that are around. So we can say chemical recycling indeed, the concept of advanced recycling, the concept of feedstock, as we've heard previously in the 2 presentations, the concept also of thermal depolymerization as well, or what we call as well molecular recycling. So what we see is that there is a lot of different concepts that are being put forward, which is not really easy to understand the whole definition, the whole discussion. And this is also because there is in Europe and also worldwide no legal definition of chemical recycling. So I also would like to perhaps take a step back when it comes to the recycling landscape, and especially in the case of plastic, because what we know is that the overall plastic production has been foreseen to increase and to double by 2060, according to the OECD country. Why the recycling market is growing, this will still represent quite a lower share of the overall plastic production. So this is still what we see, is that the recycling is not, and will not, as the current way it is at the moment, not equal the production of plastic. So now, building a bit more on the position of Zero Waste Europe when it comes to chemical recycling, what first we are always saying is that we need to rethink recycling in a holistic way, in the sense that it has to be supporting open waste stream measures like waste prevention, like development of reuse system, but also better design in the first place, and not act as an excuse to keep business as usual. So really to see this as a tool also to improve the production in the first place, as has been also presented by the previous presentations. So as you can see here on the graph, we have the waste hierarchy that is focusing on prevention, preparing for reuse, recycling, and then really when it comes to recovery and waste disposal. So as you can see on the right graph, this is here what we at Europe are calling when it comes to recycling. So we are actually making a distinction between the different processes based on different criteria, which are the efficiencies usually, the air pollution, but also the energy requirements. And so from that perspective, we will put first in the hierarchical point of view what we call polymer to polymer recycling. So putting mechanical recycling first as a priority, and together as well this solution practices. So this is what certain players are also calling like physical recycling. So really having processes that are not changing the chemical structure of the waste. Then we will have a category that is having, when we have our waste and we are going back to the monomer or oligomer level. And this is what has been called depolymerization. And in this case, we will recognize it also as a recycling technology. What we do not consider as a recycling technology, unlike other players, is pyrolysis and gasification, which we consider as a recovery technology, because we are decomposing the waste, the molecule, and we are going back really at the carbons. So this is really how to put in by classification the different processes and technologies, and we need to showcase that what is the upper part here on the slide really needs to be favored, because this is better for the environment, and this is more the lower part, and this should also as a role to play in a circular economy, but this is not what we would first put and emphasize on. So now shifting from the considerations from the presentation of the different recycling technologies, we do have, I wanted to present you a few points on the environmental considerations. In this case of the presentation, I decided to focus on the issue of pyrolysis, because this is at the moment what is being supported the most in terms of discussion at the EU level, but also what we can notice when it comes to the market evolution. So first, we have the sentence climate emissions are 9 times higher, and so it means that pyrolysis is emitting on average 9 times more greenhouse gases emission than mechanical recycling. So from an environmental point of view, this is why we really think that there is a big difference to make between these two processes. And that also, when it comes to pyrolysis more specifically, there is more than half of the carbon content that is introduced in the process that is lost, so around 53%. So this is quite a big amount. And you can see here on the graph on the right side that there is really quite a big difference when it comes to the greenhouse gases emission. This graph is extracted from a study we published and we commissioned to Eco Institute in 2021, so 3 years ago now. And this 2% effectively recycled is also what we analyzed in a study from a commission to a chemical engineer, that in the best case scenario, there is only 2% of the plastic waste that is going through the pyrolysis process that will be effectively recycled and be introduced into into a plastic product in the end. So the steps are quite different. And also that one general assumption that can be done is that it might be feasible to blend between 5 to 20% of pyrolysis oil with 80 to 85% of virgin petroleum naphtha to contain contaminants. So really, in this case, what we see is that there is really, again, always keep on use of virgin resources. This is again why we really think that pyrolysis should not be counted as a recycling technology, but rather as a recovery one. And so, as Jens has been mentioned previously, the UBA, so the environmental German agency, has published last month, I think, or 2 months ago, a study showcasing that indeed mechanical recycling is really better when it comes to the environmental impact, as in this case pyrolysis, gasification, and liquefaction, and also that these technologies have a similar climate impact at the production of virgin plastic. So now, when it comes to defining recycled plastic content, so first, and this is one of the really important points, is that recycled content should be really based on post-consumer waste only. Why? Because this is the most problematic plastic that tends to leak into the environment, and that also such an emphasis will improve the system for collection and sorting. So this is really to put a stronger emphasis on improving the system from an holistic approach, as has been mentioned by my previous colleagues. And then perhaps what is also important to say is that when we speak about defining recycled plastic content, we need to have also in mind that this is not only a question about mass balance. It's also that there is a different chain of custodies that can be applied to actually define and also account for this recycled content. So what is really key for us is always to prioritize a high level of transparency and traceability, both from a physical but also chemical point of view. In this case, we would really go towards more identity preservation, then segregation model, control blending, then certain specific use of mass balance for specific processes, and also for us, this is complete stop, and this is not acceptable to enter into the book and claims chain of custody. As you can see, there is really no link when it comes to the physical aspect, but also the chemical one. So what we also think more towards the consumer angle is that when we have recycled content claim that has been done at the product level, they should be based on weight. And this is not only a position of Zero Waste Europe, this is also the position of more broadly the civil society, but also the American Environmental Protection Agency, and as well that the claims need to substantiated also for the Dutch consumer authorities. So really the idea is to ensure that what is being claimed towards the consumer is really there. And as I've been saying already before, this credit system is really like a red line on our side. So now focusing a bit more on this issue of mass balance, I wanted to present you the 3 main roads that we have in Europe, which are proportional allocation, polymers only, and fuel use exempt. There is also in this discussion about mass balance the free allocation, which is not a possibility in Europe due to the definition of recycling under the Waste Framework Directive, which excludes any production of fuel as a recycling activity. I will be quite quite clear and short on this one, is that as you can see in all the graphs here, we have the exact same conditions applying. This is always 90% in the feedstock, where the green count as the waste-based or the sustainable feedstock, we can say otherwise, and the orange one count as the fossil-based. And as you can see on the claims here, on the different models, depending which allocation rules we use, we are actually affecting the content that can be claimed in the end. So from 10 to 50%, while not changing anything actually on the ground. So we really think that the proportional allocation is the one that would, when we have to use mass balance, is the one that has to be preferred, because it has the one which has the lowest, and that really is the closest to what's happening in reality, but also that will be the one ensuring a level playing field between the different technologies. So this is really where we say that this is important to really be the closest possible to what's happening in reality. And last, but certainly not least, I wanted to make the case for what we call an effective recycling in Europe. So 2 weeks ago, if I remember well, we saw that last week, sorry, that Plastic Recyclers Europe released a press release stating that the recycling capacities in Europe are still growing, but are really reduced pace in comparison to what was the case beforehand. And one of the main issues for this is that there is a high proportion of imported recyclate from outside the EU. This is at the moment, especially in the case of PET, because it's also the type of plastic that has recycled content requirements introduced into the EU legislation. So one of the main reasons that is being put forward, it's because it's more expensive to produce recyclate from in Europe than outside Europe. So producers will tend to go to buy recyclate outside Europe. So what as a consequence is that the recycling capacities are actually like stagnating, but actually this is key also to make really a circular economy happening in Europe. And another key problem and a key aspect is that we don't really know what is this recyclate produced outside Europe. And even DG Sante from the European Commission recognize it as a health risk, because we don't know either the origin or the quality of this recyclate. And this is even more the case for food contact application. So on this graph, as you can see, if we consider only the recycled content criteria, there is no differences if we are relying on what we've been calling here a regional circularity scenario, or if we go for more the imported ones. What actually has way more difference is that the recycling rates would be going from like half of it if we are actually relying on a lot of imported recyclate from outside Europe. While we also know that member states are already having trouble to meet their recycling targets. So this is also really important to, again, make the case to have an effective recycling happening in Europe. And also that the non-recyclable waste will also increase way more if we, again, rely on the import from outside Europe. So one of the solution that has been put forward in discussion under the packaging regulation, so the packaging waste regulation, also usually called PPWR, is to introduce a mirroring clause. A mirroring clause means that the recycler from outside the EU has to meet the same criteria of what is being produced in the EU. So this is really what sounds positive from the recycling perspective, but this is again in this case only for recycling of packaging, and we do not have the capacities, also the willingness to wait, that it's only about legislation by legislation, but the change should come from more the legislative framework, where actually the Commission should align more strategically the trade policies with the environmental and the industrial policy that have been putting into place. So this really improve and protect also the industry in Europe. So to summarize, we recognize that recycling has a role to play when it comes to emphasizing and shifting to a more circular economy, but also that differences need to be recognized and priority needs to be given to the most efficient and environmentally friendly. That recycled content claims should be transparent and reliable, that a level playing field should be ensured between the different processes, but also between the different regions of the world. And last but certainly not least, I've been focusing here on the question of recycling, but from a zero waste perspective and from the DNA of the organization, when we say that we work to eliminating the waste, but even more having strategic use of resources, we always need to look higher in the waste hierarchy. And so in this case, refusing rethinking the product in the first place, having development of reuse system, and then afterwards working towards improving as well the recycling. And of course, reducing the residual management. So this is all from me. I hope I'm on time. And if you have any question, I'm here to answer to them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Lauriane, and thank you all the speakers. I think you all deliver a very interesting presentations. So now let's move to the questions and answers. So I open the floor to anyone who wants to make questions.
Olá, Patrícia.
Olá, Cristina.
Sempre o elemento perturbador do costume.
Vamos lá.
Yes, I'd like to repeat the question I made previously to Cedric, who had to leave, and I'd like to make this question both to your entities. I forgot the names. I'm sorry. But my question is, do you think there is the risk of we are using the promise of a larger scale development of chemical recycling to postpone decisions to implement eco-design measures and assure mechanical recyclability is feasible? So this is my provocatory question to both your entities. Sorry.
Okay. Sure.
Jens is Jens and Lauriane.
Lauriane. Yes.
Lauriane. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
And of course, how can we avoid this delay in the process? If some players are waiting for the development of chemical recycling to take measures, how can we avoid this? How can we accelerate the process?
Lauriane, you go first, ladies first.
Okay. So first, thank you, Christina, for your question. I would assume that improving the recyclability of products from manufacturers is also in their own interest, because it is true that the recycled content targets are not yet there for all types of plastic, but this is coming quite quickly, and also that the pressure both from like the society in general keeps increasing. What we've seen is that there is more and more willingness for the consumers also to take on board industry for more circularity, and as a brand, this is also quite an image to also, I would say, favor. And also for the moment, we really think we speak about the packaging regulation, but there is also quite other branch of legislation that are coming into force. There is the ESPR that will really also again looked at also the plastic in itself, how to improve it, also having more circularity requirements. I think all in all, there is no interest for anyone to play the delaying tactics. And in any case, if this tactics is being played, from a longer term, legislation will enter into force. So I don't think this legislation, and I think the PPWR was quite and is still a really hot discussion, and will be really entering into force without, even if some players, let's say, are not happy with the measures, because it had been agreed, and legislation needs to move forward to also give certainty to all the players around.
Yeah, and just to chime in to Laurent, first of all, good question. And from SCS and being also close to industry, I also would agree that I think no one is using this as a opportunity to delay and or to play on time. On the other side, I think the system in a way is quite complex. I mean, first of all, as I also explained, there should be invest in recycling technology, but on the other side, the certainty to invest in a way has to be there. There has to be the regulatory framework. And it's not only, as Laurent said, the PPWR, we think about the Waste Framework Directive, the chemical recycling as such, and what we discussed is the single-use plastics. So there's also from, let's say, the regulatory aspects, not an easy nursing ground to accelerate the recycling or even the chemical recycling. Yeah, so no excuses at no point in time. As a matter of fact, I'm also always somebody who says this should develop faster and it has to be accelerated. But if you look at them from the complexity and to the end user, or look at brand owners and all that, it's the, let's say, coalition of the willing who all have to act in the same manner at the same time. And I would still summary positive from my side. Whatever right now we can recycle safely and in high quality, I think it came clear mechanical recycling is surely the solution. And also, again, why it takes a bit longer on the bigger chemical recycling and not including what I explained or Laurent on depolymerization or dissolution, has to be cautiously also weighted. And therefore you see this lot of LCAs and Öko-Institute and studies and energy and emission and all that. I would still be in favor of examining those technologies before really, as we said earlier, running before we walk and look into those. Yeah? On the other side, it is the end argument that we always have to say, and as a matter of fact, without the big chemical recycling and pyrolysis and gasification and all those processes, we surely will not be able to meet the quota. And this should be the driver to each and everyone as a stakeholder, as an actor, and also for Zero Waste Europe and all of us in the individual work, that we, as I said, find those solutions. In my opinion, as I explained, the fuel use exempt is a workable, let's say, proposal being supported by many stakeholders. However, we should have this, let's say, constructive dialogue within the industry and also with all the stakeholders to find at the end of the day the best possible way. But back to fuels, burning materials, and on the other side, letting go on incineration and landfill. Nobody wants that. Means we have to work further on recycling solution, and chemical recycling is part of it. Yeah, but as I said, cautiously to be evaluated and then to be supported and then to get invested in. Today, if we would be further and would move, looking at the collection sorting, last point from my side, we would also find and see it has to keep pace with everything. And if we look at larger scale recycling capacities and chemical recycling of 200, 300, 400,000 tons whatsoever, looking at the member state, it was expressed also by Lorian, where we are in the member states and also the different maybe viewpoints towards the EU central regulatory framework, what is then done in the member states, it will take some time. Yeah, and as I always say, 2030, 35 PPWR seems long ago. No, it's not. If we look at all this, it's tomorrow, and therefore we have to work. Yeah.
Thank you. João Letras.
Yes, thank you. João Letras from Ponte Verde. I'm sorry if I wasn't able to attend the whole meeting, so I was off and on, but I think I got the major message from both of you. Thank you very much. I had the comment mostly for Lorian, but if both of you could comment, I would welcome that. Which is regarding, well, first of all, when we say that the plastic recycling capacity in Europe is stagnating, we need to carefully look at the data and see if we're not just somewhat playing with words. So the capacity grew year on year 6% in 2023, which was in fact the lowest growth since 2017, but still a 6% growth. Whether this is stagnating or not, I would be cautious on the term, but of course it's the lowest growth since 2017. I'm totally in favor of the mirror clause, as Lorian advocated, although we believe that probably it would be more effective to have market pull public policies, because recyclers don't increase capacity because more waste is available. Recyclers increase capacity because more market is wanting to buy their products. So if we have more public policies that foster market pull for incorporation of recyclates in green procurement applications, so fiscal policy to increase the consumption of recycled products, that would probably help generate a higher demand for recyclates. And also, I don't know if it was already addressed, and if it was, I apologize, including the imports of plastic recyclers in the carbon border adjustment mechanism. That would be key to also creating the necessary offsets for the European industry. So as for chemical recycling, of course, we look at it as a very interesting process, and it's certainly going to play a very relevant role in the future. What for us is more concerning is, of course, the mass balances that always need to be carried out depending on the type of process that we use, whether it's gasification, whether it's pyrolysis or any other, and the amount that's actually recycled into a new plastic and not lost into energy. So when we look at the efficiencies of these processes, they are still much lower than the efficiencies you get in mechanical recycling, although admittedly these processes are able to process plastics that are not easily recycled mechanically. So there's room for chemical recycling. We see it as such. It would be important for chemical recycling to be able to count as recycling for the quotas of the member states, and so we're eager to start seeing these types of projects more and more developing and establishing themselves, so that we even in Iberia can see maybe plastics from the green dot system being sent to chemical recycling when that is actually the best option compared to the others. Thank you.
João, queres colocar alguma questão específica ou mesmo?
A questão era mesmo só relativamente ao ponto de como fazer
In
crescer.
English.
Ah, sorry. So yeah, so my question was more on the topic when we say that the plastic industry is under attack because of the imports. Whether the mirror clause on its own would have any real effect, or if we really need to have more market pull policies and the carbon border adjustment mechanism letting it play do its effect to create the necessary offset. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So as I was saying in my presentation, this is first an interesting movement to have this mirroring clause, but this is clearly not enough. And I was mentioning that we need to align trade agreements and also with circularity perspective. So in this case, we would agree to have also CBAM play a bigger role, but we also mean that plastic has to be introduced into the CBAM or plastic products, which is not the case at the moment. So this is an ongoing discussion that we will need to have in the coming years. So agree with you, and also agree with you that the green public procurement regulation has a role to play there to also emphasize the demand. But if the demand is also not to making any differences, then what will it mean? Will it also be then the cheapest again option to be like taken in, mostly in this case again the imported bicyclettes? So I think there is a lot of rule what we can play, let's say, or like introducing more direct measures, but I think agree with you that mirroring clause is not in any itself, and that a broader discussion is to happen, but also that not only the public procurement. So I think it's really a different tools that we have to use in this case, but I would again also still recall that this is not only about recycling, that's also a broader discussion that needs to happen, like from more horizontal point of view, because here we're focusing on recycled plastic as it's the subject of the discussion, but I'm sure it's also the case for other types of materials. I've been hearing some people speaking about also having more greener steel that is also struggling. So I think it's not only in specific case, but how can the EU in more broader discussion also ensure that some industry stays in Europe?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, maybe to add from my side, I would agree, and we have a rather fresh situation now with the PPWR and the question of imports and how to somewhat monitor this, and even to the extent to audit this, to apply the same standards as for European materials and all that. I think it's too early to tell really what is now the best solution. Of course, it should always be the principle, and there we move now from the recycling to the overall European industry and landscape, that the European competitiveness in a way should not suffer. And any kind on the other side of protectionism that we just say, okay, we don't allow those imports, I think is also not the right approach. Because as we know, looking at the virgin markets, since many years, imports of materials from Asia and other areas, and they all are found also in the waste stream and later on in the recycling management and all that. So we really have to look to find a very comprehensive, holistic solution for that, without somewhat blocking or even protecting something from happening, but more from the fact of quality, of technology and standards, and to the extent also audits and safety standards, which then should apply. Right now, I would say it's really too early, but I understand those recyclers who maybe now say, oh, now we get even imports and it's harming for our industry and growth. A bit of a critical spin from my side. But those sometimes are the same recyclers, don't get me wrong if I say that, who now have to take action and to invest in high quality recycling and also mobilize their activities and the value chain. So we come a bit to the point that it has to go hand in hand. So we have to move. And I think if we scale, if we apply those standards, if we look at the regulation we have, we should be in a good spin already today. And I think the market and the value chain and all that, the brand owners, everyone will honor that and prefer European materials at the end. But on the other side, as I said earlier, we still have to develop those regulations. Maybe something from other regulations which are on the horizon will come on top in order also to comply and somewhat create and live up to really high standards in Europe, which in a way indirectly also will protect Europe from imports and maybe inferior what we feel and what is always not a good word, cheaper materials which we have. At the end of the day, it's, in my opinion, fresh. And in the coming years, surely before 2030, there have to be defined standards, positioning, and also discussions ongoing with the industry, but also with the policymakers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you so much for your presence today. Special thanks to our guest speakers. Muito obrigada a todos pela vossa presença. Iremos voltar para o ano com novos webinars e sessões de transferência de conhecimento, aqui promovidas pelo Pacto Português para os Plásticos. Aproveito esta oportunidade para agradecer o vosso apoio, para desejar a todos um Feliz Natal e um próspero Ano Novo. Muito obrigada e muito boa tarde. Thank you so much. See you.
Boa tarde.
Merry Christmas.
You're welcome.
Obrigada. Bom ano.
Thanks. Obrigado.
Thank you.